Ladies and gentlemen, we meet again towards a very sad event, which is Tisha B'Av. This Shabbat, Parashat Dvarim will be Shabbat Chazon, the day before Tisha B'Av. But I'd like to deal with a basic concept. The basic concept is that Tisha B'Av, whether we like it or not, is the most Zionistic day in the Jewish calendar, long before Herzl invented Zionism. It is the day that people sit on the ground all over the world and they're sad because we're not together in the land of Israel. What could be more Zionistic than that? But for this, we have to understand, I think, what are the stages of our exile, of our galut, and therefore what should be the stages of our geula and our redemption. We have to know what we're looking forward to, what we have suffered, and what are we looking forward to. So let's start at the beginning. The beginning is during the first temple period. We were at a perfect situation where we had the leadership of a king, we had the social leadership of Sanhedrin, of the justice system, and we had a Kohen Gadol, a high priest who was the center figure as far as our religious conduct is concerned. So if we have a leader of the land as a king, a leader of the religion, a Kohen Gadol, and leaders of the society, which is Sanhedrin, then we're in a perfect situation. And what happened then? At the destruction of the first temple, 586 AC, we didn't only lose the temple, but 70 years later, when the temple was rebuilt, it was rebuilt with the Kohen Gadol, with the high priest, with the Sanhedrin, with our justice system. But Cyrus, who gave the permission to build the second temple, and he gave the permission to renew the Sanhedrin and renew the Beis Hamikdash and the Kohen Gadol. When he was asked, can we have a king? He said, well, 1 minute. I, Cyrus, I'm the king. And do not forget that. And therefore, Jews did not have a king during the second temple. And therefore, we were not in a perfect situation during the second temple. The only kingdom we had was the Hasmonean kingdom, which was many hundreds of years later. But that wasn't the proper Malchut, wasn't the proper kingdom because it was not Beit David, it was not the house of David, because they were Kohanim, and they took for themselves the leadership of the king of the kingdom as well. So actually, the first thing we lost was a king. Then destruction of the second temple, 70 ACE, we have destruction of the total system of the Beit Mikdash, and therefore no more Kohen Gadol, no more religious leadership. But we still had Sanhedrin. The Talmud tells us that the Sanhedrin moved out of the Lishkat HaGazit from the Beit Mikdash and moved to Yavne. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's famous words, "Tnuli et Yavne v'chachamea," let me at least relocate the Sanhedrin to Yavne. And in Yavne, they didn't have peace. They were relocated 10 times during a period of 400 years, until 400 years after the destruction, in their final location, which was Tiberias. That was the final location of the Sanhedrin, and the Byzantine church demolished the Sanhedrin, and since then we didn't have a Sanhedrin either. So what happened after 465 AC? Something very simple happened. The Jews in Israel said to themselves, we don't have a king anymore. We don't have a Beis Hamikdash and a Kohen Gadol anymore. We do not even have a Sanhedrin anymore. What are we doing here? And they dispersed into exile. And we've been in exile ever since. And that is the Seder, that is the chronological order of how things went from bad to worse, the chronological order of our galut, of our diaspora, of our exile. Comes along the Orach Chaim, the Osameach. The Osameach brings a wonderful idea from the world of medicine. And he says that the way of our healing is the opposite of the way of our illness. What does that mean? That means if I have on my hand some kind of cut, and I neglect it, and it gets inflamed, and I neglect it, and the whole arm gets inflamed. The shoulder already hurts, and I neglect it. It gets to my chest, I said, I'll go to a doctor and see what happens. And the doctor gives me medication, tells me some things to do with this, and slowly the pain leaves my shoulder and leaves my arm, and it goes back. That means when we get cured in the opposite direction of the way we get an illness. That's the basic idea. So if so, our cure has to be in the opposite direction of the illness. So what did we lose last? The last thing we lost was Jewish people being together in the land of Israel. And therefore, in Shmoneh Esrei, we first of all say, Tka b'shofar gadol lecherutenu. Get us back all together to our land. And then, once we're together in our land, we'll get to the next stage, which is, again, in the reverse order, Sanhedrin, Hashiva Shofteinu K'vo Yishona. Let's reestablish Sanhedrin. And then when we have the Sanhedrin, we know who the Malshinim are. And then we know who the Tzaddikim are. And we're ready for the next stage, which is B'Yushalayim Irchav Rachamim Toshuv. Why do we need Yerushalayim? Because we want a Kohen Gadol. And then, and only then, Etzemach David Avdechom Mehilat Atzmiach. Only then do we want a king who is Mashiach, who we will find, but he is only the end of the process. Only once we find the king, in addition to having the Kohen Gadol and the Sanhedrin, we get back to a perfect situation, which is called Geula Shlema, which we're looking forward to.